Most people grow up believing that honesty naturally brings people closer together. We are taught that if we communicate openly, admit our mistakes, share our feelings, and tell the truth, relationships will become stronger. In healthy relationships, this belief is often correct. Honest communication creates trust because both people value authenticity more than control. They may not always agree, but they appreciate transparency. They understand that truth, even when uncomfortable, is necessary for growth. However, when you are dealing with a narcissist, honesty often produces a completely different outcome. What should create connection instead creates conflict. What should lead to understanding leads to defensiveness. What should strengthen the relationship seems to weaken it. This confusing reality leaves many people questioning themselves because they expect honesty to be rewarded, but instead they find themselves facing resistance, hostility, or emotional punishment. The reason for this difference lies in the way a narcissist views relationships. Healthy individuals generally view relationships as partnerships. They want mutual respect, mutual understanding, and mutual growth. A narcissist, however, often views relationships through the lens of self-interest. Their primary concern is maintaining an image, protecting their ego, and preserving control over how they are perceived. Because of this, honesty is not automatically seen as a positive thing. It is evaluated based on whether it supports or threatens their desired image. If your honesty praises them, validates them, or reinforces their sense of superiority, they may welcome it. But if your honesty reveals a flaw, points out a harmful behavior, or challenges their version of reality, it becomes a threat. This is why so many people feel confused after honest conversations with narcissistic individuals. They enter the discussion with good intentions. They carefully choose their words. They remain respectful. They explain their concerns calmly. Yet instead of being heard, they find themselves being criticized, blamed, dismissed, or attacked. The narcissist is not responding to the honesty itself. They are responding to the threat they perceive within that honesty. What feels like a sincere effort to improve the relationship feels to them like an attack on their identity. Many people make the mistake of believing that if they could just explain themselves better, the narcissist would finally understand. They spend countless hours replaying conversations in their minds. They analyze every word. They wonder if they were too emotional, too direct, or not direct enough. They convince themselves that a better explanation will produce a better outcome. But the issue is rarely the quality of the explanation. The issue is that honesty requires accountability, and accountability is often something a narcissist works very hard to avoid. When honesty enters a relationship with a narcissist, it creates pressure. Truth has a way of exposing contradictions. It reveals patterns that someone may prefer to keep hidden. It forces attention toward behaviors that are easier to deny when nobody speaks about them. For a person who has built much of their identity around protecting an idealized self-image, this exposure feels dangerous. As a result, honesty is not experienced as an opportunity for connection. It is experienced as a challenge to control. This dynamic creates a painful cycle for the honest person. They continue approaching the relationship with openness because they believe openness should solve problems. Each time the narcissist reacts negatively, they assume they must be doing something wrong. They become more careful, more cautious, and more accommodating. They spend increasing amounts of energy trying to communicate in a way that will not trigger a defensive response. Eventually, they may begin filtering their thoughts, suppressing their feelings, and censoring their concerns simply to avoid conflict. What they often fail to realize is that the conflict is not being caused by their honesty. The conflict is being caused by the narcissist's unwillingness to engage honestly. There is a profound difference between those two things. One person is trying to build connection through truth, while the other is trying to maintain comfort through avoidance. These goals are fundamentally incompatible. Over time, the honest person may begin doubting their own perceptions. They may start wondering whether their concerns are valid. After being repeatedly dismissed or blamed, they may conclude that speaking up is pointless. The relationship slowly trains them to distrust themselves. This is one of the most damaging consequences of dealing with a narcissist because it weakens the very inner voice that helps people recognize unhealthy behavior. Instead of trusting their instincts, they begin looking to the narcissist for validation of their reality. Yet honesty continues to reveal important information, even when the narcissist rejects it. Every negative reaction provides insight into the health of the relationship. Every attempt to discuss a problem reveals whether the other person values understanding or merely compliance. Every conversation exposes whether there is room for accountability or whether accountability will always be resisted. In this sense, honesty becomes a powerful diagnostic tool. It shows you what kind of relationship you are actually in rather than the relationship you hope exists. The painful truth is that connection requires vulnerability from both people. It requires a willingness to listen, reflect, and sometimes admit fault. Without those qualities, honesty cannot create the closeness it was designed to create. Instead, it becomes a spotlight that illuminates the gaps in the relationship. The more sincerely you communicate, the more clearly those gaps become visible. What initially feels like a failure of communication is often a revelation of incompatibility. The problem is not that honesty failed. The problem is that honesty uncovered something that was already there. This is why so many people eventually realize that their honesty was never the obstacle. Their honesty simply exposed the obstacle. It revealed that the relationship could only function as long as certain truths remained unspoken. It showed that what appeared to be connection was often dependent upon silence, accommodation, and self-sacrifice. Once truth entered the equation, the hidden conditions became visible. The relationship was comfortable only when one person ignored their needs, minimized their feelings, and protected the narcissist from accountability. Honesty disrupted that arrangement, not because honesty destroys connection, but because genuine connection cannot survive where truth is unwelcome. One of the most powerful yet overlooked realities of dealing with a narcissist is that truth has a way of revealing what manipulation works hard to conceal. Many people enter these relationships believing that if they remain patient, understanding, and compassionate, they will eventually see the full picture. What they often do not realize is that narcissistic behavior thrives in confusion. It survives in environments where questions go unasked, concerns remain unspoken, and uncomfortable patterns are ignored. The moment truth enters the situation, however, hidden agendas begin to lose their protection. This is why honesty can become such a disruptive force in relationships with narcissists. It exposes motives, intentions, and patterns that are difficult to maintain once they are brought into the light. Most narcissists are highly invested in creating a specific perception of themselves. They want to be viewed as the victim, the hero, the expert, the generous one, the misunderstood one, or the person who is always right. This carefully constructed image serves an important purpose. It allows them to gain validation, maintain influence, and avoid accountability. The challenge is that maintaining this image often requires distortion of reality. Facts may be omitted, conversations may be rewritten, responsibility may be shifted, other people's experiences may be minimized. As long as nobody questions these distortions, the image remains intact. But when someone begins speaking honestly about what they see, the cracks start to appear. Truth has a unique ability to separate appearance from reality. It forces attention toward actions rather than explanations. It shifts focus away from promises and toward patterns. This can be incredibly unsettling for a narcissist because much of their influence depends on controlling how situations are interpreted. They may not always control what happens, but they work hard to control what people believe about what happened. The moment someone begins examining the facts honestly, that control becomes more difficult to maintain. Many people first notice this when they start setting boundaries. Before boundaries are established, the narcissist may appear supportive, charming, and cooperative. The relationship may even seem healthy on the surface, but once a boundary is introduced, something changes. The reaction often reveals motives that were previously hidden. A simple request for respect may be treated as an act of rebellion. A reasonable limit may trigger anger, guilt-tripping, or emotional withdrawal. Suddenly, behaviors that seem generous begin to look conditional. What once appeared to be kindness may reveal itself as a strategy for gaining compliance. This is one of the reasons boundaries are so powerful. They do more than protect your well-being, they expose intentions. A healthy person may not always like a boundary, but they can respect it. A narcissist often sees a boundary as a threat because it limits their ability to control outcomes. Their response frequently reveals priorities that were hidden beneath the surface. Instead of valuing mutual respect, they may prioritize access, influence, and dominance. Truth also exposes manipulation by creating clarity. Manipulation depends on confusion. It thrives when people doubt themselves, question their perceptions, and remain uncertain about what is happening. The narcissist may say one thing today and something completely different tomorrow. They may deny statements they previously made. They may insist that events happened differently than they actually did. Over time, this creates mental exhaustion. The target becomes so focused on resolving contradictions that they lose sight of the bigger picture. When honesty enters the equation, clarity begins to emerge. The person starts paying attention to consistent patterns rather than isolated incidents. They stop judging the relationship based on occasional acts of kindness and begin evaluating it based on repeated behavior. This shift is significant because manipulation often relies on keeping people focused on individual moments rather than long-term trends. Truth connects the dots. It reveals recurring cycles that are easy to miss when viewed one event at a time. Another hidden agenda that truth often exposes is the desire for admiration rather than genuine connection. Healthy relationships are built on mutual care. Both people value each other's needs, feelings, and experiences. Narcissistic relationships, however, are frequently centered around maintaining a steady flow of validation. Attention, praise, agreement, and emotional support are welcomed, but reciprocity is often limited. This imbalance can remain hidden for a long time because the narcissist may appear deeply invested in the relationship, yet when difficulties arise, their priorities become more visible. An honest conversation about unmet needs can reveal whether the relationship is truly mutual. If one person's concerns are consistently dismissed while the other's concerns dominate every discussion, the imbalance becomes harder to ignore. What once seemed like deep emotional involvement may actually be a continuous search for validation. Truth does not create this imbalance. It simply makes it visible. Perhaps one of the most painful discoveries truth reveals is how some narcissists use vulnerability itself as a tool. People naturally assume that sharing personal struggles, emotional wounds, or difficult experiences creates intimacy. In healthy relationships, vulnerability strengthens trust because it is handled with care and respect. But in narcissistic relationships, vulnerability can sometimes be collected as information rather than received as connection. Personal fears, insecurities, and weaknesses may later be used during conflicts, manipulated to create guilt, or exploited to maintain control. This realization can be deeply unsettling because it forces people to reevaluate moments they once viewed as genuine closeness. What felt like understanding may have been information gathering. What felt like empathy may have been strategic attention. Again, truth does not invent these realities, it uncovers them. As clarity increases, many people begin noticing patterns they previously overlooked. They recognize how often conversations revolve around the narcissist's needs. They see how responsibility is consistently redirected. They become aware of cycles of idealization, criticism, and emotional withdrawal. They observe how accountability is avoided and how blame is distributed. These observations are not signs of becoming cynical. They are signs of seeing more accurately. The exposure of hidden agendas is often uncomfortable because it requires letting go of illusions. It means accepting that someone's words and actions may not align. It means recognizing that intentions are revealed through patterns rather than promises. It means acknowledging realities that are difficult to face. Yet this discomfort serves an important purpose. It replaces confusion with understanding. It replaces self-doubt with awareness. It replaces false narratives with observable facts. The reason truth is so powerful is not because it instantly changes the narcissist. In many cases, it does not. Its power comes from changing what you can see. Once hidden motives become visible, it becomes far more difficult to ignore them. Once patterns are recognized, they become harder to excuse. Once agendas are exposed, the relationship can no longer be viewed through the same lens. Truth removes the protective cover that manipulation depends upon and reveals what was present all along, waiting to be recognized. One of the most difficult lessons people learn when dealing with a narcissist is that integrity often comes with a price. Most individuals are raised to believe that honesty, kindness, and authenticity will be respected. They assume that if they communicate truthfully, treat others fairly, and remain consistent in their values, those efforts will naturally strengthen relationships. In healthy relationships, this expectation is usually reasonable. Honesty builds trust, accountability encourages growth, and authenticity creates deeper connection. However, when a narcissist is involved, these same qualities can produce an entirely different response. Instead of being appreciated, they may be resisted. Instead of creating closeness, they may trigger conflict. Instead of earning respect, they may attract criticism, rejection, or emotional punishment. This creates a painful dilemma for many people. They find themselves caught between maintaining their integrity and maintaining the relationship. The more honest they become, the more tension seems to emerge. The more clearly they express their needs, the more resistance they encounter. The more they refuse to participate in unhealthy patterns, the more they are blamed for disrupting the peace. Over time, they begin wondering whether being truthful is worth the cost. The cost usually does not appear immediately. In the early stages, the relationship may seem normal or even exceptionally rewarding. The narcissist may appear charming, attentive, supportive, and deeply interested in creating a bond. During this period, honesty often feels safe because disagreements are minimized and positive interactions dominate the relationship. The illusion of mutual understanding creates a sense of security. Yet, as the relationship develops, subtle signs begin to emerge. Honest feedback becomes increasingly unwelcome. Questions are interpreted as criticism. Boundaries are treated as personal attacks. Independent opinions are viewed as disloyalty. At this point, integrity begins demanding something from you. It requires you to continue telling the truth even when truth becomes uncomfortable. It asks you to remain authentic even when authenticity is no longer being rewarded. This is where many people discover the hidden cost of character. One common cost is rejection. Narcissists often value agreement more than authenticity. As long as your words support their preferred narrative, the relationship may feel stable. But when you challenge that narrative, even respectfully, their attitude can change dramatically. Suddenly, you are accused of being difficult, negative, selfish, ungrateful, or disloyal. The very qualities they once admired may become the qualities they criticize. Your honesty threatens their comfort, so your honesty becomes the problem. This rejection can be incredibly painful because human beings naturally desire acceptance. Most people want to be understood. They want their perspectives to matter. They want to believe that honesty will strengthen trust. When honesty instead results in criticism or emotional distance, it creates confusion. The person begins questioning whether they should have remained silent. They wonder if speaking up was a mistake. Another significant cost is blame. Narcissists are often highly resistant to accountability because accountability requires acknowledging imperfection. Rather than examining their own behavior, they frequently redirect responsibility onto others. This means that the person who identifies the problem becomes portrayed as the source of the problem. If you point out disrespectful behavior, you may be accused of creating drama. If you address a broken promise, you may be accused of being unforgiving. If you express emotional pain, you may be accused of being overly sensitive. This reversal can be psychologically exhausting. The conversation shifts away from the original issue and focuses entirely on your reaction to it. Instead of discussing what happened, you find yourself defending your right to bring it up. Instead of receiving understanding, you receive accusations. The result is often a deep sense of frustration because no matter how carefully you communicate, the focus keeps returning to you rather than the behavior being addressed. Gaslighting represents another painful cost of integrity. When a narcissist feels threatened by truth, they may attempt to distort reality itself. They may deny events that occurred, rewrite conversations, minimize their actions, or insist that your perceptions are inaccurate. At first, these tactics may seem subtle. Over time, however, they can have a profound impact on your confidence. You begin second-guessing your memory. You question your interpretations. You wonder whether you misunderstood situations that once seemed clear. This internal confusion becomes especially powerful because it attacks the foundation of integrity. Integrity requires confidence in what you know to be true. Gaslighting attempts to weaken that confidence. It encourages self-doubt and dependence. Instead of trusting your own judgment, you begin seeking permission from the very person who is creating the confusion. There is also the cost of loneliness. Many people assume that being honest will bring support from those around them. Unfortunately, narcissists often work hard to protect their image. They may present themselves as caring, generous, and reasonable to others while displaying very different behavior behind closed doors. As a result, when you speak honestly about your experiences, some people may struggle to understand. They only know the version of the narcissist that has been carefully presented to them. This can leave you feeling isolated. You may feel unseen and misunderstood. Others may encourage you to be more patient, more forgiving, or more understanding without recognizing the full reality of what you have endured. The loneliness comes not only from the narcissist's behavior, but also from the difficulty of explaining experiences that are often invisible to outsiders. Perhaps the greatest cost is the temptation to abandon yourself. After enough criticism, blame, rejection, and confusion, many people become tired. They discover that silence seems easier than honesty. Avoidance seems safer than confrontation. Compliance seems more peaceful than authenticity. Little by little, they begin sacrificing pieces of themselves in order to preserve the relationship. They stop expressing certain thoughts. They stop sharing certain feelings. They stop defending certain boundaries. They stop pursuing certain needs. The relationship appears calmer on the surface, but the peace comes at a tremendous price. It is purchased through self-abandonment. The person remains physically present while gradually becoming disconnected from their own voice, values, and identity. This is why integrity is so costly in narcissistic relationships. Integrity requires you to stay connected to yourself even when external pressure encourages disconnection. It requires you to honor reality even when others deny it. It requires you to maintain your values even when those values create tension. The challenge is not merely telling the truth. The challenge is continuing to live in alignment with that truth when doing so carries consequences. The criticism, rejection, blame, confusion, and loneliness are real costs, but they also reveal something important. They reveal the difference between relationships that thrive on authenticity and relationships that depend upon silence. Integrity exposes that difference with every honest word, every healthy boundary, and every refusal to abandon what you know is true.